It is now my pleasure to introduce our moderator, Robert Wentz, for our Watch and Learn pitch session. Robert Wentz is the founder of Point Squared Ventures, a company that invests in the technology, energy, and data analytics industries. Point Squared is an angel and early stage private venture fund where the approach is to form startups as well as fund them. As part of this strategy, Robert co-founded Mountain Point, a cloud technology consulting firm based in Charlotte, North Carolina, and many of you in the state may have heard of this one, Central App, an onshoring software development company with workers located throughout Central Appalachia. He also founded Stonewall Energy, an energy exploration and support holding company that includes American Energy Holdings and Summit Transportation and Environmental. Robert previously served as the executive chairman of Allegheny Science and Technology, an engineering and technology company supporting mission-critical R&D efforts for the Department of Energy and intelligence agencies. He co-founded the company in 2009, where he operated the 6-time Inc. 500/5000 fastest growing company until his exit in 2020. Prior to that, Mr. Wentz founded the Information Research Corporation, a software development and engineering firm supporting the Department of Defense and NASA. Robert is a board member of Tech Connect West Virginia, so this is a great opportunity for me to say thank you for your service on our board and your commitment to growing the tech-based sector in the state. So Robert, I'm going to turn it over to you for this next great panel. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Ann. Good morning, everyone. Ann, you just made me very old with the bio. As we've heard yesterday all day long and then this morning, it's very important that entrepreneurs deliver an investor pitch, and it's a critical part of the process. To give entrepreneurs in the audience or future entrepreneurs an idea how to do it, we've asked 3 West Virginia-based entrepreneurs to provide a 5-minute pitch, which will be followed by 5 to 7 minutes of instructive and educational feedback from our experienced panel of funders. Our presenters today include Trevor Moon, CEO of NeuroWired, which is based in Morgantown, Luke Glass, CEO of RealX, which I believe is Pittsburgh and Morgantown based, and Mara McFadden, the CEO of Endolumic, also in Morgantown. I'll provide a proper introduction for those, as we get to their segments. In the meantime, let me introduce our feedback providers this morning, which is Yvonne Campos and Michelle O'Connor. A little background on Yvonne. Yvonne is the founder and president of the Next Act Fund. She's a nationally recognized businesswoman, facilitator, speaker, entrepreneur, and angel investor. Yvonne founded Next Act Fund in 2016 to help women grow their personal wealth by investing in early stage woman-owned and led companies, thereby positively impacting women, the region, and the nation. Yvonne's career includes founding and growing Campos Incorporated into Pittsburgh's premier marketing research company. Never one to sit still after she sold the company in 2014, Yvonne identified an opportunity to support other women entrepreneurs and investors with the Next Act Fund. Under Yvonne's leadership, Next Act Fund has rapidly grown its broad membership of accomplished visionary leaders from Pittsburgh's business investing community. Yvonne also founded 2 Pittsburgh chapters of the Women's Presidents Organization, a peer-to-peer learning model for women-owned businesses with revenues over $1 million. Welcome, Yvonne. Also with us is Michelle O'Connor from the West Virginia Jobs Investment Trust. I say that Michelle is the hardest working investor in the state of West Virginia. Michelle has over 30 years experience in the finance and banking industry and is the investment manager for West Virginia JIT, a leading West Virginia venture capital firm focused on turning the innovation of new ideas into successful world-class companies. She serves as a board member, treasurer, and chair of Tech Connect West Virginia, and is an advisory board member of the West Virginia Small Business Development Center and the West Virginia Women's Business Center. Michelle also has extensive experience in entrepreneurship, having successfully launched and managed several small businesses. Yvonne and Michelle, thank you for joining us today. We'd like to go ahead and get started. We're going to be on a tough time crunch here, so we'll keep it moving. And I'd like to introduce our first presenter. Trevor Moon is the CEO of NeuroWired and the principal investigator on his organization's recent NSF STTR Phase 1 award. Trevor has a bachelor's and master's degree in mechanical engineering from WVU and specializes in biomechanical modeling and simulation. He conducted his master's thesis work under his New Wired co-founder, Dr. Sergey Yakovenko. Hopefully I did that justice. Trevor, thanks for being with us today, and congratulations on your SBIR award. We'll now turn the controls over to you, and we'll do 5 minutes for your pitch, followed by feedback.
All right, thank you. So I need to share my screen, correct? So let's go here. Oops. Okay, so thank you for the introduction. My name is Trevor Moon. I'm the CEO of NeuroWired. We are a software-based company out of Morgantown, West Virginia, and we are currently working in the robotic surgery space. So robotic surgery is a field and market that's been growing over the past few years and is projected to continue to grow with projections upward towards 25 billion in 2026 with an average CAGR of 16%. And that's across 164,000 hospitals worldwide. And particularly 5,500 Da Vinci robots, which is the #1 robotic surgery console today. In the US, there's about 3,500 of these, mostly distributed in medical institutions and hospitals, mostly academic teaching hospitals. So like West Virginia University is an example, along with Carnegie Mellon and University of Pittsburgh. The problem with robotic surgery and where we NeuroWired feel that we can provide value is in training and developing skilled and experienced surgeons. So the first thing we did is we went out and talked to customers within this market. And this was talking to different pioneers within minimally invasive surgery, robotic surgery, and even medical educators. And the biggest thing that we heard from them is that there's no standard for objectively evaluating, assessing, or training surgeons throughout the clinical learning curve. And so where we think we provide the most value is reducing or standardizing these training issues within cost, objective metrics, and standardizing the quality and consistent resources available to training surgeons. And so by doing this, we can help develop, train, retain, and recruit more skilled surgeons in a faster pace while reducing risk. And what this ultimately does for hospitals, medical centers, both domestically and globally, is increase patient volume and throughput, which ultimately leads to more revenue while decreasing the amount of complications, lawsuits, and penalties due to increasing rates and penalization being set by Medicaid or Medicare. And so what we're ultimately looking to do is recording data of the surgeon at the robotic console. So through muscle activity, we can essentially reproduce their hand movements or their kinematics at the console. And what this would allow us to do is to record data of best-in-class surgeons and ultimately produce an online database of best-in-class metrics that new trainees and practicing surgeons can use to better develop their skills and fine-tune any insufficiencies during or after the learning curve. And so one thing we've started is a pilot study with West Virginia University doing and collecting some of these initial data sets. So on the left, we have an expert surgeon, Dr. Carl Schmidt, who's a surgical oncologist, and a new resident this is their second time on the console. And we can kind of see, even just generally in these quick snippets, the differences in movements and how they use the camera and the robot to accomplish a task. And on the bottom right is some preliminary results, with the expert data being on the right, and the farther it is to the right, the better. And those are just measuring co-contraction or muscle activity in the forearm and fingers as they're moving the console. And so moving forward, we want to continue this pilot and move towards validating our product and algorithms for these objective metrics. And so what we're looking for is around a $2 million investment And this is going to be acquiring human resources and capital, as well as, like I said, more R&D with WVU and our surgeon experts here to validate some of the software and hardware products that we're looking to deliver, as well as some initial prototyping for small batch manufacturing, as well as consulting with financial and legal services for development of IP. So our team, briefly touched upon, we super technical expertise driven with co-founders Dr. Yakovenko and Gritsenko, myself, Ariel Thomas, who's a graduate student of Val, as well as some advisors from the University of Pittsburgh. We have a couple pending patents through West Virginia University, as well as some that are currently being developed under the company. And that's all I got. I hope I stayed under my time limit.
Perfect, Trevor. Thank you. In fact, your time limit was outstanding. Let's open it up to some feedback. Why don't we start with Yvonne?
Okay, thank you, Bob, and nice job, Trevor. I certainly got a good understanding, I believe, of the product and service that you are trying to provide and how it's going to happen. What I didn't get very good feedback on is really the business model as to how you're going to translate this wonderful technology and this addressing a gap in the marketplace into an actual business opportunity. I did hear that you're looking for $2 million, you're going to use it for certain things. But I, as an investor, what I'm really looking for, I really want to know what the business is going to do, how you're going to project some of the business success to execute and build against milestones, and then what kind of exit might be possible. So those pieces are kind of missing from this presentation, if I saw it correctly.
Okay. Yep. That's fair. To kind of address some of those issues, I think a lot of it pivots on this West Virginia University pilot study that we're currently conducting. The technology that Neurowired has was originally purposed for prosthetic control. So one area of expertise that we have is in this movement decoding or predicting movement from biological signals. And so what we're hoping to do is consult with some of these expert surgeons at WVU to develop some of these objective metrics. And in terms of delivering a product, is currently available sensors are not available. I actually have one somewhere here. So this little armband measures muscle activity, just slip it on the forearm. However, companies like this are being bought out by tech giants. So it's a current hurdle that we're hoping to, get around with some of this small batch prototyping and during this R&D phase, as well as consulting with potential strategic and channel partners who are already in the robotic simulation space, like Mimic Technologies.
Sure.
And then hopefully kind of can start getting into some initial beachhead surgical departments like oncology, cardiovascular, and urology at regional hospitals, teaching hospitals.
Great.
So go
Michelle?
ahead, Yvonne.
Yeah.
Trevor, great job. And I would agree. The first thing that stuck out was the business model, and not necessarily from the perspective of how do I get my money back, but how are you planning to generate revenue, which goes to that end result of how do I get my money back. But this is a classic example that we see when companies, and I would even loosely categorize yourself as a company, because you haven't answered a lot of those questions that even Scott addressed. This is a great technology. Now, as an investor, I would be wanting to know, okay, who's your competition? You didn't address that, but is there, because there isn't any, which then would give me pause, because there's always competition. In the end result, your client, your customer, is it the school? Is it the surgeon to be, or a surgeon wanting to gain better skills? Or is it the patient? So I would, more clearly define who your actual customer is and wrap a story around that. But more than anything, and what we've heard over the last day or so is investors invest in people. Investors don't invest in products and ideas as much as they do people. Would have loved to have heard more about your story, your background, what got you interested in this, and then where do you see taking this technology? Is there a business that you are going to build around this? And is this a one of many products, or is this a licensing that you see? I think that's where I was at. I understood, I was with Yvonne. I understood what you were trying to do and what the technology is doing. The question that comes down is, in my mind, is can you build a business around this? Can you generate revenue? And in the end, who is your customer? And I'm assuming the customer is the university, but I'll pause it there.
Yeah, and I think just to go back on that, Michelle, Next Act Fund invests in early stage business, not really in startup business. And this is a very much of in the very, very, very startup phase. So, and it's going to require quite a bit of dollars to move it forward. So the real question is the challenge, where do you find those dollars? It may not be from investors themselves, or you have to find a wonderful angel that really is into this particular space somehow and gets it and wants to work with you all the way along. But from just going out to investors in general, there's a lot of work that needs to be done to show the business case and exactly how you're going to impact the marketplace and how you're going to generate dollars and how you're going to have a margin and what kind of, how many customers are you going to need and so on and so forth. Great idea. And a lot of times we hear a lot about great ideas. What we don't hear a lot about sometimes is what the business model is going to look like.
Right. And I think this is a perfect example of, and I think somebody put it in the chat as well, SBIR, STIR, you know,
Exactly.
SBIR funding, non-dilutive capital that comes into the company, proves the technology, gets the technology stood up, and helps you put a team together that you're looking at that then starts to move the company forward with, we've proven the technology, we've, you know, baked out the risk of whether it works or not, but we've also now are on that next stage, that next level of putting together the business model, how we generate revenue, who our customer is. So I think there's a lot of non-dilutive ways to start companies like this. And Yvonne, you're right. This is a classic example of spinning out of a university and how, as a JIT, what we do is we follow these along so that we know where they're at and where the technology is and the funding levels and the requirements are. But I think it was a great presentation, great idea. And I think now you're right. How do you raise that $2 million? What's your best opportunity to raise that $2 million from? Yep. And what's going to be the biggest bang for your buck for your company so that you don't end up with a cap table that scares off a Series A investor.
Right.
Okay. Great, Michelle. Thank you, Michelle, Yvonne, Trevor. I'm sure you would have liked another 10 or 15 minutes to get into the details. So, you know, during the next round someday, we'll open it up further. Let's move on to our second presenter, Luke Glass with RealX. Luke Glass is an executive with a range of experience from founding software startups to serving on the executive team for a public company. Entrepreneurship has been a central theme of his story, starting with his family's garbage business in West Virginia, studying entrepreneurship at Babson College, and selling his first startup to Realtor.com, and ultimately launching his newest endeavor, RealX. Luke, glad to have you with us today. We'll go ahead and give you control of the screen and we'll just keep it moving along. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. It's good to be here. So RealX is the renewable energy deal flow engine. We research property, acquire land, and purchase yield. It's much simpler than it sounds. Researching property means you've got to find the land in order to put the solar farm and wind farm on. You have to take control of that land by either leasing it or acquiring it. And then finally, there are rental payments then paid to that landowner over time. So there is yield on every one of those properties, generating rent that can be bought, can be sold, and can be packaged in many different ways. There will be over $1 trillion invested in renewable infrastructure development over the next decade. $1 trillion. And the current administration is just a huge tailwind behind all of these efforts. I joke that it's like the movie Brewster's Millions, if anyone remembers it. You've got to spend $3 million in 30 days in order to get $100 million at the end of the 30 days. And the amount of private equity and money flowing into this space is really astonishing. If I can find 10% yield for people, they'll give me $6 billion. That was an actual quote from one of the large insurance companies looking to put money to work in this space. They're looking to fund deals, looking to fund companies, and they're looking to find a way to really push their ESG initiatives. That $1 trillion of investment will generate close to $100 billion in lease payments to landowners. So what does that mean? That means this guy is the most popular person on the block for the next decade. You can see that his land is relatively flat. You can see that it's relatively cleared. You can see transmission lines going across that property. So if I want to get in as many deals as possible, RealX has to be the best at getting to this guy first. That's what RealX was built for, the foundational tools to reach these landowners and then ultimately get in the middle of these deals. So, but these motivated developers have a problem. They have 4 million acres in order to lease or purchase over the next decade or two in order to reach the United States goal of 50% renewables by the year 2050. In addition, there's over 600,000 commercial buildings that are suitable for solar today. That number, as installation costs come down, will increase. So there's probably a few million buildings across the United States that are suitable for solar. But here are the 3 key problems. The first is the technology tools to research the properties and find that landowner I just showed you. The second is the network of local individuals to reach those landowners. Who's the best person to go out and deliver an offer to that landowner out in the field? And then the third problem is financing those land purchases for future use. One of our largest solar developers in the network came to us early on and said, you know what RealX really is? We want you to be our land bank. We want you to go out and purchase the properties and then lease them to us. We prefer an institutional owner of these properties, and you'll be the land bank that holds that land in the middle. So that's the final component, because they don't want to use their balance sheets to purchase the properties, and there's some tax incentives for them to lease the properties instead. So at the core of our technology stack, we want a developer to be able to log in and use these 11 criteria to find every property in Virginia that matches their criteria. They need to be within a certain distance from a substation. They need to have a certain % less tree cover. Slope change matters, slope facing matters. And right now, every one of our solar developers are able to do these things, but they do it on 6 or 10 different screens. They've got Google Earth open on one screen. They've got a contour map open on the other screen. They've got the Dominion Energy Territory map printed out in a PDF, literally on their desk, trying to figure out what the energy provider is. So if we can be the best at providing those tools and allowing them to search, then we have them in our ecosystem for the next phase. The second phase is having that best network to reach the landowners. So to date, we have 2 million surface acres registered in the exchange. That means we either know the landowner directly, or one of our real estate professional partners has uploaded that property and let us know that they know the landowner. So every property in our system today is over 10 acres. And we have 16,000 land-based real estate professionals that have uploaded their data into the system. And we continue to expand that every day. We also get direct data from corporations. I just got off the phone with a large coal company yesterday. They're going to register 15,000 acres in Appalachia that used to be old strip mines, where they want to move forward and put solar and wind on those properties. We talk with land management organizations. We're on a track with the states and federal government for federally owned lands, federally controlled buildings, school systems. We recently just put up 30 school buildings in Mon County. 10 of them got rooftop solar offers within 2 weeks through the exchange. There is a small problem. We need the PPA bill to pass in West Virginia. So if anyone on the phone can help get the bill passed to legalize purchase power agreements in West Virginia, that'll be super helpful. We also list commercial buildings on the site. So we have about 600 buildings today. We're really a little bit more focused on land, but the commercial buildings is a huge focus for us moving forward for rooftop solar as well. And then oil and gas companies. We believe that, well, first off, every oil and gas company controls surface acres as well, in addition to the mineral rights they own. But every one of these oil and gas companies are going to become energy companies, at least the biggest ones. And they're going to get into the renewable space either through acquisitions or by using their land and joint venturing with the solar developers. So they're another really big focus in our network. And then the third component becomes becoming that capital partner. So as I mentioned, 4 million acres will be purchased or leased over the next decade or two. We're looking at 11 deals right now in our pipeline. So we delivered 11 offers that total close to $24 million to landowners in the last week or two. And so this is the very beginning of our pipeline, where RealX will actually purchase the property from the landowner, and then we sign the lease directly with the solar developer. And so we build that into our model. The second component of that is there are existing solar and wind farms out there. The solar farms, they're collecting about $1 billion of rent annually today, and the wind farms are collecting about $700 million of rent annually. So we can go out and purchase that yield from those existing owners as well, whether they want to sell us the land under the solar farm, or they just want to sell as part of their revenue stream over time, or partial of their revenue stream. So from our perspective, the deal flow engine takes motivated solar and wind developers, combines it with the best software tools and the best network to reach those landowners, and we get the ultimate opportunity to become their capital partner. We can create a really successful business by having those software tools and the best network to reach owners. But when I think about creating $1 billion company, it's really this capital side of what we're doing on generating it. So from a business model perspective,
We're a little short on time.
we monetize each one of these value propositions. On the software tools, it's a straight SaaS model to get access to the system. From the network to reach landowners, our smallest project we're working on is about $1,500 a month from one of our solar developers. And then the largest is finding 10,000 contiguous acres in the Midwest at $8,000 a month. And then we get success fees in there as well. And then being the capital partner, when I look at the debt and equity financing for each one of these deals that we're projecting, the NPV of those cash flows to RealX are somewhere between $250,000 and $1 million. So finally, it's the team that makes this happen. All three of us on the core executive team have been entrepreneurs. My background was in technology and marketplaces. We sold that company to Realtor.com. I joined the executive team there and ran all of our software businesses and strategy at Realtor.com prior to selling to News Corp and after the News Corp acquisition. Justin, my co-founder, has been in the land business for the last decade doing land and title. He also owns a tennis club and a restaurant, but his main kind of business has been in the energy sector. And Jeremy Jarrell, our head of technology and product, is kind of an award-winning product manager and also ran his own training business prior to coming to RealX. So at the end of the day for RealX, I got to be the best at finding this guy, connecting with this guy, and then ultimately trying to purchase the land under this property before the solar development goes in. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Luke. Let's quickly move into some feedback. Let's start with Michelle, if you're ready.
I am. And full disclosure, JIT is an investor in RealX. But Luke, thank you very much for the presentation. I think you did well in defining who the client and the customer is. And I think the picture here solidifies that is who will be providing, the feedstock, if we want to look at it from that perspective. What I think we would like to have seen would have been traction you already have, that you do have sales, that you're not a startup. Going to Yvonne, when we talked about with Trevor, this isn't a startup that actually has revenue, whether or not it's positive revenue or not, it has traction, it has revenue. And then competition. Who else is doing this, and why is RealX better or not as good as the competition? I think that's where I would have left it. And I'll let Yvonne add on now.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Luke. It sounds really exciting and interesting. I'm not quite sure what the role of the investor is based on this presentation. And it looks like a long-term, something you're going to hold for a long time. It looks like you're building a utility to me. So I need those questions answered. And obviously it's exciting to speak to an entrepreneur that has a lot of experience. It's sort of a serial entrepreneur, has a lot of success and so forth. That gives investors a lot of confidence, but I'm not sure I understand the role of the investor in your company.
Good. Sorry. I appreciate the feedback. I think Yvonne and Michelle want the 15-minute pitch, Robert.
That's the trouble. That's the trouble with 5, 12, 15-minute pitches, right?
Nothing ever longer than 15, Yvonne, but 15.
Yes.
Yeah. No, very, very good feedback. So I do think, in our longer deck, we do talk about traction, right? We have companies that are two-man shops that are looking for, 20 acres in New Hampshire, and we've got a Fortune 500 solar developer, wind developer on the other end, right? We're working on 15,000 contiguous acres. So to Michelle's point, there is traction. I could have highlighted
Sure.
more. From a competition standpoint, there's competition on each one of these things. They're more fragmented. So I think RealX's true value is bringing it into one ecosystem, right? They use 6 or 7 tools to research today. They use landmen and small brokerages locally to try to go acquire land.
It seems like it's messy right now, right? I mean, that's what it is. It's messy.
It's the wild, wild west. I have a picture of the wild, wild west in here, but that's where we're at from a competition standpoint. And then today it is one company. We're both a technology company and a funding vehicle. And so we are working with our board on, Yvonne, to your point, is that more sense to be 2 companies, right? One company that's the capital and financing arm, one company that's the operating company that's generating all the leads and generating the core technology. But right now it is one entity. So our investors are investing in the entire idea prior to whatever corporate structure we ultimately decide works best for
And
the
what kind of exit would there be on this?
Yeah, so I think there's 2 sides to it. One is I think this is a real exit opportunity for financial buyers. So, Blackstone has already reached out to us and said, hey, RealX, we want to go out and find yield for us. And I want to spend I want to spend $1 billion over the next 5 years. And so our perspective was, why would we give those deals to Blackstone? Why wouldn't we do it? So we're doing it. So I think ultimately financial buyers like a Blackstone become the exit opportunity. But I do think the core underlying technology is also extremely valuable. And there's more investment going into energy technology. Your oil and gas technology providers are calling themselves energy companies now. And there's a lot of private equity behind some of those companies as well that I think ultimately.
Right.
Great. Thank you, Luke. As a technologist, I will say that I'm going to go a little biased here. Follow the money. Be the bank on this one, right?
The bank. I like it. Be the bank. That's what, Robert, sometimes in the first 6 months of these startups, that's what you learn, right? Where's the money, right? It took us 6 months to find out where the money was. Yeah.
I think you're in a very active market here in the right time, right place.
Right timing, no question.
I'd be very aggressive in this. Okay, great. Thanks, Luke. Let's move on to our next presenter. We're going with Mara McFadden. She's the CEO of Endolumic. Mara is an industry executive with deep experience in medical devices and consumer technology companies. She's a UC Berkeley mechanical engineer with an MBA from Carnegie Mellon University, which in combination has allowed her to develop, commercialize, and drive revenue growth for industry leaders such as Johnson & Johnson and Philips Healthcare, as well as early stage companies. Mara, there's nothing better to me than an engineer with an MBA on top of it. So great credentials there. Welcome, Mara. We'll turn the screen over to you and let you begin.
All right. Can everyone see me and hear me okay?
Yes.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for the opportunity to come and present today and for organizing. It's such a pleasure to be here. And Michelle, Yvonne, great to see you and have the opportunity to share a little bit more about Endolumic and how we are going to unlock some value in the bariatric surgical market. So bariatric surgery is any surgical intervention that attacks the basic problem of weight loss. And obesity is on the rise across the globe, driven by a $2 billion bariatric surgery market. It's the single greatest surgical intervention on outcomes for individual health. People often think of, cardiovascular surgeries or oncology surgeries. Bariatric surgery is the single greatest driver in terms of changing people's lives. And it's performed minimally invasively. So as you can see in the picture here, the surgeon has a few small incisions and is looking at what's happening during the operation through a scope that's placed through those holes. And the challenge we're facing here is that surgical teams simply can't see well during these bariatric surgical procedures. The visibility is poor, which drives some challenging consequences. Specifically, this lack of visibility drives negative outcomes, not just in terms of extra OR time and the cost that drives, but in real medical errors. This is a significant problem. There's over 550 million recorded. This is recorded data by US hospitals every year. This isn't projected. This is reported to CMS. Medical errors and inferior clinical outcomes driven by mistakes that happen in these procedures. For example, a perforated esophagus, a perforated stomach, a leak that leads to a revision and having to do a second surgery. And this is really traumatic for people's lives. I mean, it's expensive for the healthcare system and that matters, but if you can imagine, you might go for a month without being able to eat properly, having to go in for a second surgery. And additionally, actually, I really appreciate Trevor from Norowired from introducing the surgical robotic surgery market, because there's a real limitation here. Because the visibility is so poor, robotic surgery can't be applied in this segment because they can't get strong enough visualization to use it effectively. So the solution we're offering today is the endolumic system, which lights the stomach from within for safer and more consistent bariatric surgeries. So the images you're looking at here on the left, it's a little hard to tell, but that's actually the stomach. And there's a tool that's inserted down through the throat, through the esophagus, into the stomach to help position it and control it during the surgery. And then the tool you can see is the surgical stapler that runs alongside of it. It is very difficult to see exactly where the stomach is, which means you can do things like perforate it, like I mentioned, or make it the incorrect size when you run that staple fire. Our device, as you can see in the bottom, uses near infrared lighting to show you exactly where the stomach is, and that calibration device, or bougie as it's called in industry, is located in the stomach. This achieves several outcomes. It reduces risk of surgical complications that we talked about, speeds up the procedure, which gets OR time. You can have more turns in the OR during the day, more consistent results procedure to procedure, which drives those key patient clinical outcomes that I talked about. It also combines the capabilities of several tools. We can do suction and leak testing all in one tool rather than having to take them out and put new ones back in. And finally, and potentially most excitingly in terms of the technology it unlocks, it enables the use of those near infrared robotic surgical tools that Trevor told us about. So endolumic leverages the existing installed infrastructure. So in ORs today, over 80% of them already have laparoscopic towers. This is a Stryker one, for example, here, that have near infrared visualization capabilities. So the hospitals are already wired for this. There's no extra work to do for building this infrastructure. We don't need to plug into it. We are simply putting lights inside a tool that are emitting this near infrared light for the existing towers to pick up. There's no software connection, physical connection. It's merely light being emitted and a camera seeing it. And that infrastructure is already installed. So we have our intellectual property is secure and being rolled out of WVU. We talked about a couple examples of that today. We're fortunate to be partnering closely with WVU on this. And we have a utility patent that covers this use of near infrared lighting for foregut, GI, bariatric, basically all the laparoscopic surgical applications. So quickly looking at our competition, we're taking advantage of a new trend in the marketplace, which is traditionally these tools, these bougies, were reusable, so having to be sterilized and sanitized between each procedure. However, particularly with COVID, but just in general, hospitals are moving more towards single-use devices. There's only one other single-use device on the market today, which is this Visigi 3D from Boehringer. It launched about 5 years ago, and in just 5 years, this single device has taken about 40% market share. So surgeons are hungry for better tools. They've shown eagerness to switch and explore. These surgeons want this, and we have a better product than the Visigi 3D. Another really relevant one that I'll get to is the GastroSail from Medtronic. It had a lot of great innovations, but unfortunately it was recalled a couple of years ago. Due to a safety consideration that is completely unrelated to our device, just if you are concerned. But it did leave a real hole and opportunity in the marketplace that we're hoping to capitalize upon. So we are raising a $500,000 seed round of financing. We're keeping this company very lean and largely virtual. We're using contract engineering and a contract manufacturer to hopefully build towards the greatest multiple we possibly can and a quick 510K milestone from the FDA. Speaking of the FDA, one of the reasons that surgical devices make for such attractive investments within the life sector space is they don't require human clinical trials. Because the tool stays in the surgeon's hand the whole time, there is a very different risk profile than, for example, an implantable device that's then going to live long-term inside the human body. So there's no human clinical trial needed. This goes through as a 510K instead of a PMA. And so relatively, there's no promises with the FDA ever, but in this spectrum, it's a relatively very, very low risk medical device to go through, which is why we think we can do it so capital efficiently. The testing required is very well characterized. And in terms of launching into the market, there is a nice, there's surgical centers that are specialized in bariatric surgery. So they're easy places, easy points of call to kind of start these conversations. We know where the bulk of the procedures are happening. So I'll wrap it up here, but our team, thank you for the kind introduction. I'm Mara McFadden. I'm an entrepreneur. I've been in the medical device and health industry for over 15, nearly 20 years now, and have the privilege to work at Johnson & Johnson, Philips Healthcare, and I have launched devices like this before nationally and globally many times. And my partner and the founder is Dr. Novazoka from West Virginia University. She's the inventor of this technology. And part of the reason I love working with her is she's got a lot more ideas up her sleeve. So I look forward to what else we can build together. So I'll wrap up quickly, but one of the key things I like about this is there's potential for strategic partnership on both surgical device side and the robotic surgery side. So we've had a lot of interest in exciting conversations with several of these strategics here. And we have been quite busy. Oh, sorry, I clicked twice there. We're looking at a $200 ASP, which is comparable to the Visigi product we talked about earlier. And there's a total market of about a little less than 200 million globally based on just this $200 ASP and the known procedure counts we have today. So this is pretty solid market size data. We've been very busy. We have our MVP prototype complete. We did our first in vivo animal testing in November. Gen 2 cadaver study is completed. We submitted the IRB for our first in human and are working kind of full steam ahead towards that. Our big milestones are that first in human live trial and finalizing the designs freeze for the FDA testing. And we would love to work with any of you to help illuminate the future of minimally invasive surgery. I mentioned we're raising that $500,000 round. We are very close to securing our lead investor, and we are looking for partners to help us finish out that round and build something great together. Thank you so much for your time.
Great, thank you, Mara. We're running a little tight on time, but let's quickly get some feedback. Michelle, do you want to start?
Mara, great job. You hit all the checkpoints as to, you know, the competition, all of that. I guess you know, it went longer than the 5. So, I mean, we go back to Luke's idea that, you know, we were always looking for the 15-minute pitch.
Yeah.
But the idea of pitches is to generate that interest for the investor or seed funder to say, I'm interested, let's have a longer conversation. And I think this does that in a lot of ways. I guess the other thing that I would have curiosity on, you're looking for the $500,000 for the 510K approval. And there's a strategic conversation then going on about maybe licensing, acquisition. Mm-hmm. So from the investor perspective, what am I investing in? Am I investing in a 510K? Am I investing in a business? Am I investing in the potential of this ramping up to multiple products under an umbrella? I guess that's where my question and the vagueness of the pitch left me.
I would agree with that in the sense that I actually was thinking when I first saw what you were going after for the 500, I thought, why so little? And where would that get you? Mm-hmm. And the question really, as an investor, when you're looking for a company that is solving a problem, that has scalability, has a strong team, looks like it's able to execute, because all of that doesn't matter if you don't execute. And you have exit potential in the various descriptions of that. The real question is, how quickly can you get out to the market?
Yeah.
And you need cash to do that.
Mhm.
So I'm just curious as to why you're asking for such little money at this point, and where will it take you? Will it take you to the just the 510K, or will it take you to another bigger milestone?
Absolutely. Well, very quickly, I'll address that. So our strategy was to get the minimal investment we thought we needed to get to that 510K, and then use our Series A to drive the sales revenue growth. And when we benchmark similar companies and what their acquisition prices are once they've shown some revenue creation in the marketplace, it's typically between $25 to $50 million. So we wanted to cap the total raise at around $2 million to make sure we had that 10x multiple available for our investors. So we thought through the 500,000 to get the 510K, and then anything between 1 to 1.5 to do the initial sales, so that we could generate the maximum possible return on the investment for everyone. But great questions, and I would love to discuss more. And absolutely, if there's an opportunity to structure it in a way that is better for everyone involved, I would love to have that conversation too.
Great.
And the
Thank
other
you.
question, oh, excuse me.
Yeah, we're going to have to wrap up, Yvonne. I think we're going to roll into this. It sounds like you need an offline discussion between you two, and you need to get to Yvonne. So thank you, all of the presenters, and thank you, Yvonne and Michelle. And back to you. And it sounds like we need to plan another event for just pitches that give you the 15, 20-minute pitches.
Bob and all the panelists and reviewers, thank you so much. I really wish we were live and in person today so that we could give this group of presenters a great big round of applause. That was really, really good and educational for all of us, and exciting as well.